The first hint of a Lagos morning is not the light, but the smell. For Samuel Sam Adekunle, it was the sweet, earthy scent of sandalwood and sawdust that woke him long before the city's hum began. At 26, he moved with the deliberate grace of a craftsman, his every motion a conversation with the wood he shaped. His small workshop, attached to the one-room apartment he shared with his children, was still steeped in shadow as he slipped from his mat on the floor. Jemima, who was 7, was curled into a tight ball, her small hand clutching the edge of 5-year-old Leo's wrapper. They slept with the serene innocence that was both his greatest joy and his heaviest burden. Looking at them, a familiar ache bloomed in Sam's chest, a mixture of fierce love and the ghost of a loss that never faded. He had been their mother, their father, their everything, for 3 years now. The memory of the sudden fever that had stolen his wife, Funke, was a wound he touched every morning. His children were the reason he got to his feet. He dressed in the near dark, worn jeans, a faded polo shirt, and sandals he'd repaired himself. In the corner that served as their kitchen, he prepared a small pot of pap, its warmth chasing away some of the morning chill. He ate his portion standing, listening to the soft sounds of his children's breathing. It was enough. It had to be. Outside, the air was cool and carried the scent of charcoal fires and promise. He didn't have to walk to a construction site. His work was right here. His world was one of chisels, sandpapers, and the soul of mahogany. He was a furniture maker, an artist whose hands coaxed life from timber. Each joint he carved, each surface he smoothed, was a small act of creation, a defiant stand against the emptiness his wife had left behind. Each finished piece, a sturdy chair, a polished table, was a victory. A few more naira for food, for Jemima's school fees, for the medicine Leo sometimes needed for his asthma. Sometimes, in the quiet of the afternoon, when the sun streamed through the workshop door and illuminated the dancing dust motes, he would pause his work. He would look at the photograph of Funke tacked to the wall, her smile as bright and warm as the Lagos sun, and he would whisper the words that had become his prayer, his promise to her and to the 2 small lives she had left in his care. "I'm trying, my love," he would breathe into the fragrant air. "One day I will give them the world." He didn't know how, he didn't know when, but in the landscape of his heart, that hope was the only thing he built that was stronger than oak. Across the city, in a world that might as well have been another galaxy, Amara Ikea-Tunye woke to the silent, automated drawing of her blinds. Her penthouse in Echo Atlantic was a masterpiece of glass and steel, with a panoramic view of the ocean that stretched to the horizon. At 32, she commanded the kind of wealth born of genius and relentless drive. As the founder of KoboWise, a revolutionary fintech app that empowered small businesses, her name was synonymous with innovation. But the woman herself was a mystery. She had returned to Lagos a month ago after a decade of building her empire abroad, not for a triumphant tour, but for a quiet retreat. She wanted 2 months of stillness, a chance to reconnect with the city that had shaped her. She ignored the racks of couture in her walk-in closet and pulled on a pair of simple linen trousers and a plain silk blouse. She looked in the mirror, her face a mask of calm composure. She had her father's sharp intellect, but it was her mother's wisdom that guided her. They had been teachers, both of them, who had poured their modest salaries into her education and filled her head with books and ideals. "True value, Amara, is not in what you accumulate," her mother used to say, "but in what you build in others." That lesson was her anchor in the dizzying world she now occupied. It was also the reason she was still alone. She had met countless men, charming, successful, devastatingly handsome, but their interest always felt like a pitch meeting. They saw the CEO, the tech icon, the name on the Forbes list. They never saw the woman who would rather discuss philosophy than stock options, the woman who found more substance in a well-crafted sentence than in a luxury car. "I want a man of character," she'd recently told her mother. "Someone with depth. Someone who knows the value of hard work because he's lived it." Her mother had simply advised, "Then you must look in places your balance sheet cannot see." Today, she decided, was for one of those places. No drivers, no meetings. She picked up the keys to a discreet SUV and headed out. "I just want a normal day," she said to the opulent silence. She needed to pick up a prescription from a pharmacy her mother recommended, and then visit a small, struggling art gallery she was thinking of supporting. It was a simple plan, an attempt to touch the pulse of the real Lagos. Fate, however, was about to give her a shock to the system. The pharmacy was a clean, well-lit space, a calm island in the bustling sea of a mainland market. Amara browsed the aisles, picking up a few toiletries in addition to her prescription. She shared a polite smile with the pharmacist. A warm, observant woman named Mrs. Kioma paid for her items and walked out into the car park. As she approached her SUV, she juggled the small paper bag and her car keys. In that fleeting, ordinary moment, her expensive leather purse, slung over her shoulder, slipped off and fell silently to the ground. She didn't hear it over the market noise. She didn't feel its absence. She got into her car, her mind on the art gallery, and drove away. She felt calm, anonymous. She didn't know she had just left her entire identity on the tarmac. A few minutes later, Sam arrived at the same pharmacy. Leo had woken up wheezing, and Sam's heart was tight with worry. He clutched the crumpled Naira notes he'd earned from a small repair job, praying it would be enough for a new inhaler. He bought the medicine and stepped back out into the bright afternoon. As he navigated the rows of parked cars, his eyes caught something on the ground near where a sleek black SUV had just been parked. A woman's purse. It was beautifully crafted from soft, dark leather. He paused, his heart giving a small, hesitant beat. He looked around. People bustled past, but no one seemed to be frantically searching. He stepped closer and picked it up. It felt heavy. His hands, calloused and stained with wood varnish, trembled slightly as he opened it, hoping to find an ID. The contents made him draw a sharp breath. It was packed with credit cards, a Nigerian ID, a US driver's license, and a thick wad of US dollars. More money than he saw in 6 months of hard work. "Ah, someone is having a very bad day," he whispered. He immediately searched for a contact card. The name on the ID was Amara Ikiatuanie. A flicker of recognition. He'd seen that name in the newspapers. The phone number on her business cards was for her office in America. He tried calling it, but it was after hours there. For a dizzying moment, the world seemed to narrow to the contents of that purse. The money inside could solve so many problems. A new, better inhaler for Leo. A deposit on a larger apartment, an end to the constant grinding worry about the next meal. No one had seen him. He could just walk away. The thought was a tempting, desperate whisper. But then the image of his children's faces, their trust in him as absolute as the rising sun, filled his mind. The lessons of his father, a man who had little but gave much, echoed in his heart. Integrity was the one inheritance he was determined to pass on to his own children. To take what wasn't his would be to teach them that character was negotiable. The whisper of temptation died, silenced by the steady, resonant voice of his conscience. Something deep within him, the very core of the man Funke had loved, said no. He turned and walked back into the pharmacy, the purse feeling like a sacred trust in his hands. Amara drove for 15 minutes before stopping for petrol. The attendant smiled. "Cash or card, ma'am?" "Card," Amara said, reaching for the passenger seat, for the purse that wasn't there. Her hand met empty leather. She froze. A cold dread washed over her. She patted the seat, her movements growing more frantic. Nothing. She threw open the car door, her composure cracking. She searched the footwell, the back seat, the glove compartment. The purse was gone. Her heart hammered against her ribs, her passport, her IDs, her access to everything. She looked at the confused attendant. "I'm sorry, I have to go." She didn't wait for a reply. She turned the key with a shaking hand and sped back towards the pharmacy, a frantic prayer echoing in her mind. "Please let some good person have found it. Please." She pulled into the car park and ran into the store, her usual poise completely gone. She rushed to the counter where Mrs. Kioma was attending to another customer. "Excuse me, please," she interrupted, her voice breathless. "I was here just a little while ago. I think I lost my purse. A black leather one." "Did anyone?" Mrs. Kioma's kind face broke into a broad, reassuring smile. "The young man who came in to buy an inhaler for his son," she said. "He found it just after you left. He gave it to our security guard for safekeeping." The tension in Amara's body dissolved in a wave of disbelief and overwhelming relief. She leaned against the counter, her knees weak. "Thank God," she breathed. "Can I see the guard?" Mrs. Kioma called for the security guard, Mr. Tunde, who emerged from a back office. He listened to Amara's description of the purse and its contents. "Yes, ma'am," he said, nodding gravely. The young man was very concerned. He said he couldn't find a local number to call you. He retrieved the purse from a locked drawer. It was hers. She took it, her hands not quite steady. She opened it. Everything was there, the cash, the cards, her IDs. Nothing was missing. She clutched the purse to her chest, stunned. In a city where so many struggled, a man in need had been faced with a great temptation and had chosen honor. "The young man," she said, her voice filled with an urgent need to connect with this stranger. "Where is he? Did he leave a name? A number?" The pharmacist, Mrs. Kioma, shook her head. "No, ma'am, he was in a hurry. Worried about his son. He didn't even wait for a thank you." The quiet dignity of his actions resonated with Amara more deeply than any grand public gesture. She asked for a piece of paper and a pen and wrote down her personal mobile number. She folded it and gave it to Mrs. Kioma. "Please," she said, her voice filled with sincerity, "if he ever comes back, please give him this. Tell him to call me. I must thank him properly." "Of course, ma'am," Mrs. Kioma said, her eyes shining with approval. Amara pulled a generous amount of cash from the purse and gave it to both the pharmacist and the guard. "Thank you," she said, "for being part of this, for your honesty." They thanked her warmly, but as Amara walked back to her car, her relief was mingled with a profound, consuming curiosity. She scanned the bustling market street, hoping for a glimpse of this honest stranger. But he was gone. A feeling settled deep within her, a certainty that this was not a random event. This was a beginning. 3 weeks passed. For Amara, the memory of the honest man at the pharmacy remained a bright, intriguing puzzle. She found herself thinking of him often, this stranger who was worried about his son, whose quiet, active character stood in such stark contrast to the performative world she moved in. She hoped, with a surprising intensity, that he would return to the pharmacy and that she would get the chance to meet him. For Sam, those 3 weeks were an exhausting blur of work and worry. Leo's asthma had worsened, requiring more expensive medication. The memory of the purse had faded, a brief, surreal moment in a life defined by relentless struggle. He had done the right thing, and that was that. But one Saturday, he received a small but significant payment for a set of bespoke bookshelves. With the extra money, he decided to buy a stronger brand of inhaler for Leo. His steps, inevitably, led him back to Mrs. Kioma's pharmacy. As he was paying, the pharmacist's eyes lit up with recognition. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice warm. "I'm so glad you came back." Sam looked at her confused. "The woman whose purse you returned," Mrs. Kioma explained, her smile wide and knowing. "She left this for you." She held out a small folded piece of paper. Sam blinked, completely taken aback. "For me?" "Yes, she was very serious about wanting to thank you," the pharmacist added. Sam took the note, a jolt of surprise running through him. He unfolded it. A phone number written in elegant script. His heart began to beat a little faster. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected anything at all. "Oh," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Okay, thank you." He clutched the paper in his hand as he walked home, his mind buzzing. What could it mean? He was just a furniture maker. She was a famous CEO. What could she possibly want? He carefully placed the slip of paper in the small paper bag with Leo's new inhaler, deciding he would think about it after he'd settled the children. When he got home, Leo's wheezing and Jemima's happy chatter about her day at school pushed all other thoughts from his mind. He set the pharmacy bag on their small table and focused on his children. Later that evening, while Sam was preparing dinner, Jemima decided to be a good helper. She saw the empty paper bag on the table. With the proud efficiency of a 7-year-old, she crumpled it up, along with other bits of rubbish, and took it outside to the large communal waste bin. She did it with a bright smile, unaware that nestled inside that bag was a fragile, unspoken connection to a different world. By the time Sam remembered the note, it was already too late, lost to the city's evening refuse collection. The next morning, Sam woke with an unusual feeling of lightness. The memory of the phone number surfaced with the dawn. A small, hesitant smile touched his lips. Today, I'll call her, he thought. The idea filled him with a mixture of terror and exhilarating curiosity. What could he possibly say to a woman like her? Later that afternoon, after Jemima and Leo were down for their naps, he decided the moment had come. He took a deep breath and reached for the pharmacy bag on the table. It wasn't there. He felt a flicker of confusion. Then the memory hit him like a physical blow. He had left the note inside the bag. Jemima, he called out softly, not wanting to wake Leo. Jemima came in from the small yard, her eyes bright. Yes, Papa? The paper bag from the pharmacy yesterday, Sam said, trying to keep his voice calm. Did you see it? There was a small piece of paper inside. Jemima's face fell as she saw the distress in her father's eyes. The empty bag, she whispered. I threw it away when I was cleaning. Oh no. The words were a choked whisper. Without a second thought, Sam ran out of the house, his bare feet slapping against the dusty ground. He didn't care who was watching. He ran down the alley, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm of hope and dread, straight to the big metal waste bin. He reached it, breathless, and threw open the heavy lid. It was empty. The clang of the lid falling shut echoed the sudden hollowness in his chest. The collectors had already come. Sam stood there, frozen, staring into the void. All the fragile hope, the tentative curiosity vanished. His hands dropped to his sides, his legs suddenly weak. He slowly sank to the ground, leaning against the hot metal of the bin. He stared at the ground, a single thought circling his mind. How could this happen? Tears of frustration stung his eyes. It felt like a cruel cosmic joke. A tiny, unexpected door had appeared in the wall of his life, only to be sealed shut before he could even knock. But after a few moments of quiet despair, the deep well of resilience that had sustained him for years began to stir. He wiped his face on the sleeve of his shirt and pushed himself back to his feet. He looked at the empty bin one last time and took a deep, shuddering breath. If it's meant to be, he said softly to himself, his voice regaining its steady timbre. It will happen. The thought of going back to the pharmacy, of asking Mrs. Kioma for the number again, crossed his mind. But he dismissed it. He couldn't bear the thought of looking so desperate, of chasing a lifeline from a woman so far beyond his world. It was a matter of pride, of the quiet dignity that was his most valuable possession. So he turned his back on the empty bin and walked slowly home. Deep inside, in a place he barely acknowledged, a tiny ember of hope still glowed, but he buried it under layers of sawdust and sandpaper, trusting, as he always had, in a fate that was far more complex than any design he could ever draw. 2 more weeks slipped by. Sam's world returned to its familiar rhythm of wood grain, school runs, and the quiet triumphs of his craft. The lost number became a half-forgotten story, a brief glimpse into a life that wasn't his. Then, one Saturday morning, his neighbor, Mama Funky, knocked on his door. Sam, she said, her voice full of excitement. There's a free health screening at the local government secretariat. Doctors, nurses, free medicine. It's sponsored by that big tech company, KoboWise. You should take the children, especially for Leo's chest. The prospect of a proper checkup for Leo was a gift from heaven. Okay, Mama Funky, Sam agreed gratefully. We'll go. The secretariat grounds were packed, but the event was impressively organized. Sam and his children moved through the lines, and Leo was seen by a kind doctor who gave them a new, more effective inhaler. Sam felt a quiet surge of immense gratitude. As he turned to leave, his gaze drifted towards a booth where volunteers were handing out nutritional supplements. A woman's face caught his eye. It looked familiar. Sam squinted. It was the pharmacist, Mrs. Kioma, wearing a volunteer t-shirt. As if feeling his stare, she looked up. Her eyes widened in recognition, and a brilliant smile lit up her face. She beckoned him over. Ah, it's you, she said warmly, as Sam approached with the children, the man with the honest heart. But I thought, did you not call the woman? Sam smiled back, a genuine, shy smile. Yes, Ma, I'm the one. But I lost the number you gave me. Mrs. Kioma's smile grew even wider, a hint of mischief in her eyes. She leaned in close, as if sharing a great secret. The woman is here, she whispered. She's the one who sponsored this whole event. Sam's heart gave a violent lurch. He froze, his eyes automatically scanning the crowd, a whirlwind of shock and disbelief churning within him. Was this the moment he had surrendered to fate? The pharmacist, enjoying the drama, looked around for a moment before subtly pointing towards a covered dais where a woman was speaking with the local officials. That's her, she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. That's the owner of Kobowise. Let me go and tell her you're here. Panic seized Sam. His eyes widened. No, please, he whispered urgently, shaking his head. There's no need for that. I didn't come here for that. But Mrs. Kioma was already on a mission. With a determined smile, she bustled off, leaving Sam standing frozen, his heart hammering against his ribs. He watched, as if in a dream, as she approached the dais, spoke quietly to an assistant, and then pointed directly at him. A moment later, Amara Ikia Tuonya turned her head. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and then they found his. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Then she excused herself and began to walk towards him, her steps unhurried but deliberate. When she finally reached him, she stopped, a gentle, almost relieved smile on her face. I finally found you, she said, her voice as calm and poised as he had imagined. Sam could only manage a shy smile in return. Good afternoon, Mum. Your name is Sam, right? She asked, her eyes kind. Sam, he corrected gently. My name is Sam. Sam, she repeated, as if tasting the name. You have no idea how long I've been trying to find you. Looking at the ground, he explained in a rush, I lost the number the pharmacist gave me. My daughter, she threw it away by mistake. She smiled, a light, understanding expression. I'm sorry about that, she said, but maybe today wasn't a mistake. Maybe we were meant to meet here. She looked at him with such kindness that he finally felt his shoulders relax. She took out her phone. Please, type your number in here. With slightly trembling hands, Sam took the phone and carefully entered his number. She called him immediately. Please call me when you get home, she said gently. Okay, Mum, he replied, his voice filled with a joy so pure it almost made him dizzy. Before she left, she reached into her handbag and retrieved a small envelope, handing it to him discreetly. For your time and trouble, she said. Sam's own eyes filled with tears of gratitude. He clutched the envelope to his chest. Thank you, Mum. God bless you, he whispered, his heart overflowing. She simply smiled, nodded, and turned back to her duties, leaving Sam standing in the middle of the crowd, feeling as though the entire world had just tilted on its axis. The walk to the bus stop felt unreal. Sam clutched the small envelope from Amara, feeling its weight and significance. The world around him, the cacophony of Lagos traffic, the shouts of vendors, the press of the crowd, seemed distant, muffled by the loud, happy beating of his own heart. A small yellow bus, a Danfo, screeched to a halt in front of him, already packed to the brim. He squeezed his way on, settling Jemima and Leo between him and the window. The bus was hot and noisy, but Sam didn't mind. He sat down, placing his small tool bag on the floor between his feet. The journey was a blur of bumps and swerves. His mind kept replaying the scene at the health fair. Amara's kind eyes, her gentle smile, the impossible coincidence of their meeting. It felt like a chapter from a different life. A few minutes later, the bus conductor yelled his stop. The bus began to slow down. In the usual Lagos rush, passengers started pushing towards the exit. Sam quickly gathered his children, his mind focused on getting them off the bus safely. He paid the conductor, grabbed his tool bag, and herded Jemima and Leo towards the door. In that hurried, frantic moment of juggling two small children and his belongings, his phone, which had been in the loose pocket of his trousers, slipped out and fell silently onto the dusty floor of the bus, sliding under the seat. He didn't feel it go. He stepped off the bus and was immediately absorbed into the bustling crowd on the sidewalk. The bus door hissed shut behind him, and with a roar of its engine it pulled away, carrying with it the small, forgotten phone that held the most important number Sam had ever saved. He had no idea what he had just lost. Not yet. The joy of the day still bubbled inside him, a warm, hopeful glow. When he reached his apartment, the first thing he did was open the envelope. It contained enough money to cover Leo's medical needs for months and stock their pantry. Tears of gratitude streamed down his face. After carefully putting the money away, he reached into his pocket to get his phone. He wanted to call Amara right away, to thank her again. His pocket was empty. His fingers searched his other pockets, his wallet, his keys. But no phone. He checked his tool bag. It wasn't there. Then the memory hit him. The bus, the rush. He must have dropped it. His stomach clenched. The joy of the day instantly extinguished, replaced by a cold, hollow despair. He had lost her number once by accident. To lose the phone itself felt like a cruel, deliberate act of fate. He sank to the floor, his hands clenched into fists. He closed his eyes and whispered into the sudden, crushing silence, "God, you are faithful." It was a desperate affirmation, a plea to a universe that seemed determined to keep them apart. Later that night, in her quiet penthouse, Amara sat with her phone in her hand. She was filled with a pleasant anticipation, remembering Sam's shy grace and the deep love for his children that was so evident in his eyes. She wanted to hear his voice. She dialed the number he had so carefully typed into her phone. She listened, expecting a ring. Instead, she got a recorded message. "The number you have dialed does not exist. Please check the number and try again." She paused, confused. She checked the number in her contacts. It was what he had entered. She tried again, the same message. It wasn't switched off. It simply didn't exist. A strange, uneasy feeling began to creep into her chest. Why would the number be invalid? By the next morning, the feeling had grown into a restless anxiety. She tried again, hoping it was a network error. Still nothing. The silence felt like a deliberate deception. Doubts began to poison her thoughts. Had he given her a fake number on purpose? Was this his way of taking the money and disappearing? It didn't square with the man who had returned a lost fortune. Unable to sit still, she drove back to the pharmacy. It was the only lead she had. Mrs. Kiyoma was at her post. "Good morning," Amara greeted her. "Good morning, Ma'am. I heard you found your honest man at the health fair." "Yes," Amara said, forcing a smile, "but the number he gave me isn't working. Do you by any chance know where he lives?" Mrs. Kiyoma's smile faltered. She shook her head apologetically. "No, Ma'am, I'm sorry. I only know him as a customer." Her shoulders slumped, another dead end. As she walked back to her car, her mind was a storm of questions. She didn't know what to think anymore. The thread of connection she thought she had finally grasped had disintegrated, leaving her alone with her questions and a profound sense of disappointment. 2 days of silence followed. The invalid number was a constant, frustrating puzzle in Amara's mind. To clear her head, she decided to drive through the old neighborhood where she had grown up, a place of dusty streets and cherished memories. She drove slowly, the windows down, letting the familiar sights and sounds wash over her. As she navigated a quiet street near her old primary school, something caught her eye. Beside a small rickety wooden stall, piled high with yellowing second-hand books, an elderly man was slumped in a chair, his head resting against the dusty wall. There was something in his posture, a familiar dignity even in weariness, that snagged her attention. She slowed the car, her eyes fixed on him. As she drew closer, she saw his face, etched with the fine lines of age and hardship. Her breath caught in her throat, her chest tightened. It couldn't be. She looked again, her mind racing back through time, to a classroom filled with sunlight and the sound of a kind, patient voice explaining long division. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "that's him." She pulled the car over, her movements swift and certain. She stepped out, her heart pounding. She walked over slowly, her eyes never leaving the sleeping man. It was him. Older, frail, but unmistakably the same man. Her old primary school teacher, the one who had first told her she had a brilliant mind. "Mr. Elechi." She stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. "Mr. Elechi," she called out gently. The old man startled awake, his eyes wide with confusion. He looked up at the tall, well-dressed woman standing over him. "Please, who are you?" he asked, his voice weak and raspy. Amara smiled, a soft, tender expression. "It's me, sir, Amara Ikea Tuonya. I was in your primary 5 class." The man stared, his mind struggling to connect the name to the face of the child he remembered. He searched her features. Then a flicker of recognition, followed by a tidal wave of disbelief. He covered his mouth with a trembling hand. "Amara?" he whispered. Little Amara, who always had her hand up. The one who loved books more than playtime. Amara nodded, her own eyes misty. "Yes, sir." A small cry of joy escaped his lips. He struggled to his feet and took her hands in his own frail ones. "My child," he said, his voice cracking. "My child, look at you. I read about you in the papers. Ah, God is good." Amara held his hands tightly. "Sir, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice soft, but laced with a deep pained concern. "Why are you out here like this?" The old man's brief moment of joy faded, replaced by a profound sadness. He sighed and looked away. "It is a long story, my child." Amara didn't need to hear it all right there. She saw the story in his worn-out clothes and the dusty, neglected books. She gently held his arm. "Come," she said, her voice firm with a newfound purpose. "Let me take you home." Without hesitation, he let her lead him away from the bookstall. As they drove off, leaving his old life behind, Amara knew that her aimless drive had just found its destination. Amara took Mr. Elechi to her home. She settled him into a comfortable guest room, provided him with fresh clothes, and made sure he had a warm meal. The next morning, she found him sitting by the window, looking out at the ocean with tears in his eyes. "My child, God will bless you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have taken me away from shame." Amara sat with him, and over a cup of tea, he told her his story. After retiring from teaching, he had used his life savings to open a small bookshop, his lifelong dream, but with the rise of the internet, people stopped buying books. His business failed, his savings vanished, and eventually, he lost his home. The bookstall on the street was all he had left. Tears streamed down Amara's face as she listened. The man who had opened the world of knowledge to her had been left with nothing. His story resonated with her mother's values, with the belief that education was the most precious gift. After he had gone to rest, Amara went into her study. His story had ignited a fire in her. She wouldn't just give him a home, she would restore his life's work. Her wealth, which had often felt isolating, now felt like a powerful tool for change. She picked up her phone and dialed her most trusted project manager. "Good morning, ma'am," the man answered. "Good morning," Amara said, her voice filled with clear, resonant purpose. "I have a new project for you, a special one." "I am listening, ma'am." "I want to build a library," Amara said, "a state-of-the-art community library and learning center. In my old neighborhood, I want it to be free for everyone, filled with books and computers. And I want it ready in 3 months. 3 months, ma'am?" the project manager repeated, surprised. "Yes," Amara confirmed. "It's for someone very special. We're going to name it the Elechi Learning Center." There was a brief pause. "All right, ma'am," the project manager replied, his voice infused with the gravity of her tone. "Consider it done." Amara hung up the phone. She had found a purpose for her pain and frustration, a way to channel it into creation. She was going to build a sanctuary of knowledge, a blueprint of mercy, in honor of the man who had first taught her how to dream. Construction began the following week. Amara threw herself into the project, overseeing every detail. The library was more than just a building. It was a statement of her belief in the power of education, a tribute to her parents and to Mr. Elechi. Weeks passed. One sunny afternoon, Amara decided to visit the site to inspect the custom-built furniture that was being installed. Bookshelves, reading tables, and chairs for the children's section. She arrived and walked through the half-finished building, the air thick with the smell of fresh paint and sawdust. The craftsmanship of the furniture was exquisite. The lines were clean, the joints were perfect, and the wood seemed to glow with an inner life. "This is beautiful work," she said to the site manager. "Who is the artisan? I must meet him." The manager smiled. "He's a local fellow, ma'am, incredibly talented. His workshop is just in the back." He led her through the noisy site to a quieter area under a large canopy. There, a man was bent over a large tabletop, his body moving in a fluid, practiced rhythm as he sanded the surface. He was covered in a fine layer of sawdust, and the air around him smelled richly of mahogany. Amara watched him, a flicker of recognition stirring within her. There was something about the focused intensity of his work, the graceful strength in his posture. As he straightened up to wipe the sweat from his brow, her view of his face became clearer. Her breath hitched. Her heart, which had been so full of purpose, began to beat a little faster. She squinted, her mind refusing to believe what her eyes were seeing. Wait, she whispered to herself, could that be him? She took a step forward, then another. The man, sensing her presence, looked up. His face was streaked with sweat and sawdust. He was so focused that he didn't recognize her at first. But she saw him. She saw him clearly now. It was Sam. The man who had returned her purse, the man who had given her a number that didn't exist. Here he was, the artist creating the heart of her library. The sheer, staggering improbability of it sent a jolt through her. All the threads of her life, her lost purse, her frustrating search, her tribute to her teacher, were converging in this one unbelievable moment. She waited until he looked up again, his eyes finally focusing on her. Recognition dawned, followed by a wave of pure shock. His mouth fell open slightly. "Mom," he said, his voice a breaking whisper, "You... again?" They stood there for a long, silent moment, the world of the construction site fading into the background. There were only the two of them, a billionaire and a builder, caught in a moment of surprise, confusion, and a destiny that was proving to be both relentless and inescapable. The air between them crackled. The site manager looked on, confused by the sudden, charged silence between his boss and the furniture maker. Amara took a step closer, her eyes locked on Sam's. She saw the exhaustion in his face, the fine sawdust clinging to his eyelashes, and the deep, unwavering integrity she had recognized from the very beginning. "You know," she began, her voice quiet but resonant, "I was told the number you gave me did not exist. I started to believe. I started to doubt." Sam's face flushed with shame and frustration. "My phone," he said, his voice strained. "I lost it on the bus on my way home that day. I'm so sorry, Mom. I had no other way to reach you." The simple, honest explanation washed away all of Amara's doubts in an instant. Of course. It was never a deception. It was just another cruel turn of fate. She looked from his earnest, troubled face to the electric sander still humming in his hand, a symbol of the hard, honest labor that defined him. Her expression softened with resolve. She had been given another chance, a final, unbelievable chance to connect with this man, and she would not let it go. She met his gaze, her voice now calm but infused with a gentle authority that left no room for argument. It was not the command of a client to a contractor, but the invitation of one soul to another. "Sam," she said, her words soft but firm, "I need you to turn that off, stop your work for a moment, and come with me." Sam's fingers tightened around the handle of the sander. He looked up at her, his heart pounding, his mind a whirlwind of fear and hope. What did she want? What could this possibly mean? For the second time in his life, Amara Ikiotunye was about to change everything. The whispers started among the crew as Sam, after a moment of hesitation, switched off the sander and wiped his dusty hands on his trousers. He followed Amara to the quiet, half-finished shell of the library's main reading room. Inside, away from the noise, the air was cool and smelled of new beginnings. Sam stood awkwardly, feeling out of place. Amara turned to face him, a soft, genuine smile on her lips. "Sam," she began, "I don't want you to misunderstand. I'm not offering you charity. What you did, returning my purse, that was a debt, and the universe has brought us back together so I can finally pay it." She could see the pride in his eyes, the fear of being seen as a charity case. She knew she had to approach this with the utmost respect. "Your work," she said, gesturing to the beautiful tables and shelves around them, "is incredible. You are a true artist. Your talent deserves more than a small backyard workshop." She paused, choosing her next words with precision. "I want to offer you a partnership. My foundation is launching a new initiative to support local artisans. I want you to be our lead craftsman, to design and build for all our community projects. We'll provide you with a new, fully equipped workshop and a team to assist you." Sam stared at her, speechless. It was an offer so far beyond his wildest dreams, he could barely comprehend it. She wasn't finished. "And your children," she continued gently, "Jemima and Leo. I would like the foundation to set up a scholarship in your name, to honor your integrity. It will cover all their educational and medical expenses right through university." She framed it all as a professional partnership, an investment in his talent, a way to harness his skill for the greater good. It was an offer of a bridge, not of chains. She was giving him the tools to build his own enterprise, not just a handout. Tears welled in Sam's eyes, but for the first time in 3 long years, they were not tears of sorrow or despair. They were tears of overwhelming, gut-wrenching relief. The whispered prayer he had repeated for so long in his dusty workshop was being answered. "Why?" he finally managed to ask, his voice choked with emotion. "Why are you doing all this for me?" Amara looked at him, and for the first time she allowed the warmth and deep admiration she felt to show plainly on her face. "Because, Sam," she said softly, "you reminded me of what's truly valuable, and that's a lesson worth more than any amount of money." She saw the tension leave his shoulders, his pride satisfied. He gave her a watery, brilliant smile, and in that moment she knew her search was finally, truly over. The transition was immediate. Sam became a central figure in the library project, not just as a contractor, but as a creative partner. Dressed in clean clothes with the resources of the foundation behind him, he felt like a new man. He was a natural leader, his sharp eye for detail and his quiet passion inspiring everyone on the team. Jemima and Leo were enrolled in one of the best schools in the city. Seeing them thrive, with Leo's health stable and Jemima's love for learning exploding, was a joy so profound it healed a part of Sam's heart he thought would always be broken. Their story, however, did not go unnoticed. A few gossip blogs got wind of the tech queen and the carpenter, spinning tales of a fairy tale romance. An envious contractor made a few snide remarks. But Amara shielded him from the worst of it, her quiet, steady support a shield against the world's cynicism. She proved her intentions were honorable, her focus on his empowerment, not possession. 3 months later, the Alechi Learning Center was complete. It was a beautiful modern building, filled with light, books, and the vibrant hum of possibility. Amara organized a grand opening ceremony, inviting the entire community. The guest of honor was Mr. Alechi, who stood tall and proud, the years of hardship melting away from his face. At the height of the celebration, Amara stood to speak. She thanked the community for their support. Then she turned to her old teacher, her voice thick with love, and formally dedicated the library to him. Finally, she looked across the stage, her eyes finding Sam's, who was sitting in the front row with his children. "I also need to thank someone else," she said, her voice ringing with sincerity. "This project and a new direction in my life were inspired by an act of profound integrity. A young father and craftsman reminded me that our true foundation is built on character." She told the assembled guests the story of the lost purse. "His honesty inspired me to look closer at the talent within our own community, to start investing in a more personal way." She then announced the official launch of the Benjamin Foundation for Nigerian Artisans, a new initiative to provide workshops, grants, and support for people like Sam. She looked directly at him. "And I've asked Sam Adekunle to be the foundation's creative director." A wave of applause filled the hall. Sam's face was a picture of shock and radiant joy. She hadn't just given him a job, she had given him a voice, a purpose. She hadn't just rescued him, she had made him her partner. Later, as the guests explored the new library, Amara found Sam in the children's section, watching Jemima and Leo read a book together. "You've given us so much," he said, his voice soft. "A new life. I don't know how I can ever repay you." She came to stand beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "You already have," she said. "You showed me where to find true wealth." The romance between them blossomed slowly, naturally, rooted not in a dramatic rescue, but in the shared, everyday work of building something that mattered. It grew in the quiet moments of planning for the foundation, in their shared laughter over Leo's latest drawing, in the simple, profound comfort of two hearts that had finally found their home in each other. Their love story was not one of a billionaire saving a poor man, but of two remarkable people building a new life together, a life founded on the unshakable bedrock of integrity, compassion, and a quiet-rooted love.